Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. We're in a completely different environment right now because we're at the HQ. We're at Mid-County Farm and Feed office. And with me, as always, is my co-host David Poole, owner of Mid-County Farm and Feed, and your guide to all things gardening.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, what's up, man? I like this. I like what you've done with all this space here.
Yeah, man. It's been a long time coming, and spend every day here. So
yeah.
Yeah,
there's better vibes here than there was in the original. I like the original set because it's like locked in.
Yeah,
we're really close to each other.
Yeah,
and you just kind of like vibe. But this is really nice. I like what you've done with the space.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So it's cool. We got we have a demo garden out back. So
I noticed you took me on a tour. It was really cool.
We got it started last year, and then we got really busy, so it's kind of fell by the wayside. But we're cleaning it up now, getting ready for spring.
Yeah,
so that we can. Hopefully do some episodes outside in the garden next season. So
that's next season. But right now we are looking, we're staring dead center down at winter, right?
Yeah.
Winter's around the corner. Right now as we're recording this, it is December 3rd. It is not technically winter yet, but it is like the meteorological winter.
Okay.
I just heard that term today, so it's not in my brain yet. But what is one of the best things to grow in winter? I think you told me about this earlier.
Onions. So,
onions.
There's not a whole lot of things that you can grow in the wintertime. There's not a lot of things that are going to thrive as we move into the colder temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's not always cold in the so-called winter here, I'm a believer that we don't really have a winter season here. I think we have a cool season from a grower's perspective, but not a true winter season.
So what really makes the winter as a season here isn't always necessarily the temperature, right? It's about the light hours. Right.
Yeah.
And some plants can't sustain themselves on short light hours.
No, and onions are one of the few things that can. In fact, like what varieties that you choose to plant are going to be determined strictly by the length of day.
Yeah. And that kind of goes for like all alliums, right? Onions are in an allium family, which is onions and garlic and leeks. What else? Am I missing anything?
No, I'm sure there's some others.
There's a million different kinds of onions.
Those are the three most common. So
I'm gonna tell you something that kind of really bums me out. So I play Stardew Valley. Have you ever played Stardew Valley? Do you know what that is? Stardew Valley is an 8-bit game where it's like it's kind of like Harvest Moon. It's a cozy game is what they call it, and it's what me and my fiance play. And I'm really upset. There's 4 seasons, and you grow garlic in the spring. And I'm like, why is that not grown in at least the fall or the winter?
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, like, here you start it in late summer, like August into September, and garlic takes such a long time to grow here. And I find that, it is a very difficult thing to grow here because it takes so long. Usually you're looking at 180 days plus.
That's half the year.
Yeah, sometimes 9 months it could take for it to form
it's a whole pregnancy.
Yeah, a group of cloves. So it's crazy. It takes a really long time. I've never personally had any success growing garlic, but I also don't truthfully have the commitment and the time to give it.
That shocks me because garlic's so cheap. Garlic's so cheap in the grocery store, and to me, I feel like if something is cheap, it doesn't take a long time to grow.
Yeah, and true. I will say that maybe I'm not necessarily growing the right type of garlic.
Right.
There's a ton of different ones, and I am not versed in different types of garlic.
I've only grown one. I've grown elephant garlic. That was the only one I ever grew.
And elephant garlic is not a true garlic.
No,
so,
what is it?
No.
Is it an onion?
I don't know if it's truly an onion, but I remember learning that recently or last season that it's not a true garlic.
So besides being absolutely delicious, what are some of the other benefits of growing garlic? Why should I grow alliums?
It's one of the only things that you can grow this time of year. You're moving to the cold times. So right now in our garden, we're seeing a lot of our things like fall tomatoes, fall peppers.
Yeah.
They're beginning to decline. They're still producing.
Yeah, I still have some tomatoes on mine.
Yeah, they're slowing down. You're seeing like the the waves of cold weather and warm temps. Like today we're in the 40s. 2 days ago we were in the 60s and 70s. So you're seeing the temperature and the environmental factors playing an important role in stressing plants out, essentially.
Yeah.
And
we haven't had a frost or a freeze yet too, so it's important.
So we're in that transition period, and while a lot of people are still possibly putting in some of their winter crops, like their greens and their root crops and such, but all those things are going to have a much shorter life and a shorter time span to maturity. So those alliums are going to be one of the only things that are going to grow all the way through winter and into springtime. They're going to be kind of wrapping up their life cycle at the point where we're beginning to put in early spring crops.
Yeah, okay.
So, and for me, it's important because we always want to have ideally something growing in the soil so that we're continuing to support a living soil.
Okay,
so
that kind of goes around. That's what I was asking you is like, why not just, leave my raised bed garden alone?
Yeah,
I also see a lot of people during the winter cover their raised bed gardens with like a black, like maybe like a visqueen or something. I don't really know what that's for either. But
a lot of people are doing that to solarize the soil, so they're
Okay.
killing off any kind of weeds or any kind of growth that might be potentially coming in the cold season.
But we want a healthy living soil.
Right. And at the same time, you solarize, you heat the soil. While that can increase microbe activity during the winter months, but it might actually do damage. It might overheat the soil, and if something gets too hot, most things can.
So ideally, it's kind of good practice just to constantly have something in rotation.
Yeah.
Right? Always have some living things in your raised bed garden. Also, for me at least, because I'm lazy, if I have something in there that I know that I'm going to eat, something that I'm invested in, I'll make sure that I take care of that raised bed garden and give it what it needs. And if I let it just go by the wayside for a few weeks, I might forget it for several more weeks. I might be late on my spring planting.
Yeah, and
there's all that stuff.
For me, it helps keep a calendar, because I know when most of my onions, for me, onions are one of my favorite things to plant.
Yeah.
They're not one of my favorite things to eat personally, but I love growing them because they're pretty easy overall.
Yeah.
They're not a complicated crop to grow, but I do know, as I'm moving in and my onions are finishing their life cycle, it's time, my timing is right on a lot of my other items when I get into spring.
So it just kind of helps you gauge where you are in the year, and it's a constant reminder, oh, it's getting close.
And keeping a living soil, keeping something growing at all times is going to make me more successful in my spring garden where I may be getting a higher production of many different things, whereas this time of year, I might only have onions until it's time to plant potatoes. So that's my other cool season crop that we're going to put in most of our areas.
Yeah.
And truthfully, the yield for onions and even like potatoes as we move into that colder or the beginning of next year, the yield you get out of there for the amount of work that goes in,
it's really high.
It's really, really high.
Yeah, it is high.
It's definitely.
It's also
better
it's like the easiest thing to plant too, right?
Yeah.
And speaking about that, there's a few different ways that we plant it. I don't know anybody that plants onion from seed.
It's very difficult
because onions are a 2-year plant, right? I believe.
Yeah. So it depends. There are some onions that you buy to plant like that are what they call an onion set.
Yeah, that's like the bunch of onions. Yeah, that's
it's like a little bulb. It looks like a little pearl size onion. An onion set is typically last year's onion. Or so they say they're from a previous season.
Right, because those probably were grown from a seed.
Right.
And then it took all year to become that little bitty onion that goes in the bunching set. Or at least that's how I kind of like piece it together in my head, is that from seed to flower to seed again is about 2 years. I could be wrong, but
I've never grown them by seed because I know that they're incredibly difficult to do by seed. If you've ever seen an onion seed, I mean, they're tiny.
It's a flea. It's like the size of a flea.
Thinking about getting those started and in a tray, it's almost like planting carrots. They're difficult. You're going to sow them out and you're going to have to thin them out, but like starting it just seems so difficult.
Yeah.
And then the timing is also difficult for me. And I'm busy planting my fall garden at that time. So worrying about babying those tiny seedlings are going to be difficult. So most people find the highest yield and success from getting an actual onion plant.
Right. Okay.
So it's a starter. So you have like what will become the bulb, and it has already a small section of green top on it, and you'll buy them in a bundle.
It's like rubber band.
Yep, they're usually going to be like 50 to 60 plants per bundle, and there's a wide variety of onions. And one of the most important things about growing onions is understanding that you've got to have the right variety for the length of day.
Right. Right.
In correlation to
it's about those sun hours.
Yep,
Right.
and it's all about when the length of day correlates with cool temperatures.
Right.
So there are 3 classifications of day length that you can look at when you're looking for onions.
Are these tied in with the zones, for instance, or are they just kind of like?
Yes.
Okay.
They're going to be tied into geographical areas. So you have long day onions, which are going to need they're going to need like 15 to 16 hours of sunlight a day. So that's going to be like northern United States.
Okay.
Then you'll have like intermediate day onions, which are going to be probably like I think it's 12 to 14, somewhere in that ballpark. That's going to be like your middle United States. And then what we grow here in Zone 9A and most of the southern United States is going to be a short day onion. So
aren't the days up north shorter than they are here?
In the wintertime, when it's cold, they're longer. You think about at certain points of time in the north, some of the winter seasons, it's daylight for long, long periods of time. So it really lines up with day length and cool temperatures. We know, but your growing season for onion in the north is probably drastically different than here. Here we only have one opportunity.
Right.
And that's right now. So we're typically looking at late November into middle of December.
Okay, so this is a sweet spot.
Yeah. That's really the most ideal time. So we do short day onions here. The most popular short day variety that you'll find in the Texas region is the 1015 super sweet. So
I figured it was going to be a sweet onion. Actually, I don't really know about the differences between, say, your red onions and your sweet onions and white onions and where they grow. But I do know that sweet Vidalia onions grow really well in Georgia, where it's very similar to here.
So Vidalia onion is a Granix onion, which is the same family of onions that the 1015 is.
Right.
But the Vidalia onion can only be grown in that one region.
In that one little spot,
It's because there's components in that soil that give it that very specific taste. So you could plant that same variety of onions somewhere else,
and it won't have.
But it's not going to taste the same.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting about like soil quality and soil content, so how it can affect the taste of something.
Yeah.
But the 1015, the yellow super sweets are the most popular. They're going to get the largest if they're grown correctly. I mean, they can get the size of size of a softball. I mean, very, very good. We've seen some really, really big ones over the years. Mm-hmm. Then you can do reds. There's the red Creole or red Southern Belle.
And they're all in the onion sets, right? Yeah. Okay. So sweet red, all of those will be in the onion
they'll be in
set.
the bundles. So, and then you have, lastly, white onions. White onions are pretty popular. They're going to grow smaller. They're never going to get as big as your reds or your yellows here, and they're going to be far more pungent.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the ones that make you cry.
Yeah,
for sure. What about when I go to the nursery or the garden and I see the chives that are grown there? Why don't I ever see chives in a set, like an onion set? It's always just in soil already.
Chives are in the herb family. They're not a true onion.
So chives aren't onions.
To my knowledge, they're not onions.
I always thought that onions, they grow the green stalks. They have it up top because a green onion is an onion. But then really small green onions are chives.
I don't think that they're. If I remember correctly, they're not the same.
You're blowing my mind. You're blowing my mind right now.
But again, I'm a learner. I'm not always an expert. I don't know everything.
Yeah, of course. And we're kind of talking. We're getting culinary and botanical kind of fused up too. So that's a funny thing too about this stuff is they're very different. When we talk about fruits and vegetables culinarily, we're not really using the same language that we do botanically, right, as gardening. So it's kind of a trick question. I'll tell you, though, too, you said you don't really like onions very much, right, to eat them. I don't know if you're a shame-driven person like I am, but basically here's a little tangent. But when I was 15, I went to go stay with my brother in North Carolina, who's much older than I am. My mom was like, yeah, you can go stay with your brother. And on that journey over there, we stopped halfway, and my mom transferred me into the care of my brother. And it was midday, and we went to McDonald's, which is a place where I would want to eat because I was very picky. And I ordered a double cheeseburger, and they come with pickles and onions on them. And I tell them to leave off the pickles because I hated onions when I was a kid, right? So they left the onions on there, and I pulled it off. I didn't make a big fuss, but I just quietly like scraped the onions off there. And my brother looked at me and was like, boy, what are you doing? I was like, I don't like onions. He's like, leave the onions on and eat the sandwich. Just eat the sandwich. Stop being a baby. And I didn't like being called a baby. I was a 15-year-old boy, right? So I was like, oh, I'll show him. I can eat this too. And immediately I was like, you know what? Onions are delicious. I don't know what my problem was.
I don't like. For me, it's not the flavor. I'm not a crunchy onion person.
Yeah.
It's the textural, like.
Because you have to admit that the flavor is
great.
The flavor is one of the best flavors.
Cook with them all the time.
It's one of the best flavors
Yeah.
in the garden. Yeah. It really is. It's a powerhouse. Like,
it is.
I can't imagine any soup without onions.
Yeah.
Really, I can't. Like, imagine just a chicken noodle without onions or a potato soup. It would just be flat and boring and dead.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That's onions, though, man. That's the power of them.
So, like, when you think about, like, cooking, interesting enough, like, from a culinary perspective and something that's important when it comes to growing onions, the sweeter the onion, the shorter the shelf life. The more pungent the onion, the longer the shelf life.
I guess that makes sense because the things that make vegetables pungent are things that that's their immune system, right?
Yeah.
Really. So I mean that does make sense to me in a certain way, but I could also see the sweetness lasting longer too because sugar is kind of a preservative. But that makes sense. It's very interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of why you have some of those white onions are more of a pantry item, and then some of the sweet onions maybe put them in your fridge.
Yeah, and you keep them cool. So we'll talk about storage in a little bit. So yeah. I mean, as far as like planting onions, I mean, it's such incredibly simple. You know, when you're buying these bundles, like the hard work is mostly done for you. So you're taking that and you're spacing them out in your raised bed or your garden at intervals of like 6 to 8 inches.
Do you make a grid when you're doing this, or do you just eyeball it?
I eyeball it. You know, I'm not.
I see people that like take painter's tape and make like 1 foot by 1 foot grids and plant. I'm just like,
there's a guy that I follow on Instagram. It's Zone 9A Gardening. He's an older guy. He's cool. He makes awesome videos, and he had the tape measure out, you know, and he's got him spaced, but he's maximizing space. Like, you know, if you're maximizing space in production, you know, it's very helpful.
Yeah, of course.
I don't have that luxury in time, so I never get that technical. You know, I kind of eyeball it, putting them at about 6-inch spacing, and also I have irregular shaped beds. Like a lot of times I plant my onions in some of my round beds.
Sure.
So I'm planting them around other things. So I'll just eyeball it, but I want to make sure that they have plenty of space.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, I could plant them tighter. So interesting enough, if most people are wanting to grow a large onion.
Right.
But let's say you're like me. I don't really have the use for a large onion. I don't cook every day.
Right.
So a giant, baseball, softball size onion, like when I cut that up, I'm not going to use it all. Right. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll place those onions closer together so that they have a little bit more constriction, and they're typically not going to grow to full size.
Sure.
And that helps me be less wasteful so that we're not just throwing it out at the end or putting it in the fridge and forgetting about it, after we've cut it open.
Yeah.
So you can really kind of constrict the size of the final product by how close you put them. But ideally, if you're growing them for size, you want to plant them about 6 inches apart.
Give them room to grow.
Yeah.
If you overplant them, does it become a point where it's depleting your soil because you have so many?
I would say not necessarily, because you're going to be feeding pretty heavily.
Okay.
Because
onions are a heavy feeder.
They're a heavy nitrogen feeder.
I didn't know that. That's good to know. Very good to know.
So you're going to plant them about 3/4 of an inch to an inch deep. So they're not very, they're deeper than like seeds would be, but you're going to be planting that bulb part down and the green top sticking up. And sometimes when you buy these, sometimes the green tops will be kind of dried. And they'll look like they're in poor quality. But if you touch that bottom of that bulb and it's still firm and it's not soft or mushy,
Then it's good to go.
it's good to
Yeah.
go. If that
Yeah.
top dies, it will put more out. So sometimes when you're looking, because you buy these plants and they ship them in, you can't water them until it's time to put them in the ground. So if
Sure.
they've been sitting for a week or so,
They're just dormant.
they'll be fine. Long as they're firm on the bottom, you've still got a good onion.
They're like Sylvester Stallone in Demolition Man. He's fine. He'll come back to life. What are there some opportunities for companion planting with onions? I know that one reason why onions are so great right now is because it's the only thing that's growing. But are there other things that might also be beneficial to grow alongside of them?
Not specifically that come to mind.
Like your greens, for instance. If you're already going to plant cabbage because it's kind of winter, or spinach, would it be beneficial to kind of like put onions throughout your cabbage?
Maybe. I mean,
Maybe even just for safe space, saving space.
oftentimes I will choose more open spaces because I'm going to be feeding these onions pretty heavily.
Oh, okay, yeah. That
And
checks
while
out.
while greens do need a fair amount, but I also have to consider, like, now a lot of my greens are larger.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them like broccolis and things like that are putting out actual heads.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I might not be wanting to feed as heavily. I'm not wanting to overfeed it, but the onion needs a lot of nitrogen. It's
Yeah.
the key component. When you look at like onion planting guides, they're always going to recommend usually like a synthetic nitrogen, like an ammonium sulfate or a calcium nitrate.
Like a blue general
No,
purpose.
it's
yeah.
usually just like a white. It's just nitrogen, so only one
okay.
element. Because what you're wanting to achieve in growing that onion is from the time you plant it until about mid to late January, you want to get the green tops as big and as abundant as possible. Because what a lot of people don't realize is all the energy that's stored in those green tops, that's what's going to be used to make the onion.
Right, yeah, because it shoots down,
Yep.
and the onion, the part that we eat, that's kind of like that plant's
Yeah.
battery, right?
Yep. So if you don't get a good top production in the early growing phase, which is all green, so if you do it from an organic standpoint, your organic fertilizer is going to be lower in value. It's going to be slow release.
Right.
So
'cause
you're gonna
yeah.
put it out there, but then you're gonna supplement. So fish emulsion becomes a great tool in
Okay.
organic production of onions. You can spray those green tops and absorb the nitrogen in, or you can still water it in because
Oh.
an onion has a lot of water content. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
It's primarily
primarily
water.
water.
So it will absorb up that nitrogen, and
Yeah.
you're getting those green tops. And as we get to that late January, we're moving into February. That's when those tops are going to begin expelling that energy, and the bulb is going to start creating.
It's amazing that these plants, it makes the green top gets energy from the sun, and then it makes sugar water to store in the root, and then we eat it. It's
cool.
I mean, it's magic. Yeah, it really is. It's magic. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's for me. It's one of the biggest things that people need to consider when they're growing onions is like knowing that you need those green tops.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say for sure, last year I planted some onions out here in the demo garden, and I got really busy. I didn't even really water them well, but they got watered
Mm-hmm.
enough. But they never got fed, and the tops were very small. I would call them poor quality, and I didn't get anything bigger than like any onion bigger than maybe the size of a shallot.
Oh wow. Yeah,
So
well,
they were not big at all.
I'm glad you said that because first of all, shallots. That's my favorite allium. Shallots are the goat. They're definitely the goat in the culinary world. I'll tell you that much. What are some of the signs that our onions aren't doing good? Because this is kind of what you're talking about. Do I need to pay attention to my green tops and kind of have a time window in mind and go, oh, these guys haven't grown and they need fertilizer? Or is it maybe that, do they kind of flop over? Do they get limp? Do they discolor?
They will flop over. They're going to get limp, and interesting enough, in the onion world, that's its indication that it's expelled all its energy and that your onion is reached the largest that it's going to get.
So that's like ready to harvest.
Yeah.
So
So-
when the tops flop,
Yep. Now,
pull it out.
if the tops start flopping or getting discoloration early on,
Yeah,
that could be signs of lack of nutrients, overwatering.
Overwatering, not underwater.
Underwatering.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah,
That's my
onions
favorite
need-
thing about gardening is they're like, hey, it could be overwater, could be underwater.
The only way you're going to know is put your hand in the dirt and
Yeah.
see, is it really sopping wet in there? Onions, ideally, when they're growing the green tops, they need about an inch of water per week.
Okay.
So
that's not very much.
That's
I don't-
pretty. That's
yeah.
pretty average for most vegetables. An inch of water per week.
You can, where we live, you can nearly guarantee that
Yeah.
to be taken care of by nature, except for this past couple months. But
Yeah.
that's very easy.
And when they get to the point where they're beginning to bulb, the
Mm-hmm.
water intake increases because we talked about how it's primarily water.
It is, yeah.
So you'll use around. I think they need roughly around 2 to 3 inches of water per
Okay.
week
So-
whenever
so
they're
double.
bulbing.
Yeah.
So it is important to know that and know that timing, like that you do need to increase your watering, and that can make it difficult. If you asked about like companion planting,
Yeah.
because these plants have some very, very specific needs that might not be conducive to other plants. 2 to 3 inches of water on a consistent basis might not be great for other things.
Sure,
But
yeah,
really at that point in time when it's beginning to bulb in January, moving into February, there's not really much else growing.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of it. I've seen people growing onions, and it's like peeking out from the snow. You know what I mean? I've
Yeah.
seen lots of those videos online, and it's like, man, it's the true winter crop.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. So when you do get to that point where the tops are beginning to fall over, and the onion is ideally ready
Mm-hmm.
to harvest, you're usually going to kind of fold those tops over, and you're going to kind of just basically going to fold it all the way over to the soil, and then you're going to let it sit for a day or two, and that's going to allow that onion to begin the curing stage.
Oh, you have to cure the onions.
Yep. So when you're gonna leave it in the soil for a day or two, then you're gonna pull it out after that, and then you're gonna lay it out somewhere where it's gonna have complete airflow. So onions, because it's primarily water, we want to make sure that we're getting airflow and that the outer portion is staying dry.
because it will mold otherwise,
Yep,
won't it? Yeah.
So if you think about it, if you ever bought a bag of onions and
Yeah, there's always mold.
and, well, if an onion is touching another onion, that's the point in where it molds or
Right.
rots.
yeah, because there's no airflow.
Yep.
There. Yeah.
So it's damp. You think everything molds where moisture and
Right.
and darkness or light and air don't reach. So you lay them out on a surface like you can make a screen, or if you have a wire shelf, lay them out separating them with the tops still on, and you're going to leave those tops on there until they brown, and they basically where the onion tops come out of the bulb, it's basically going to have kind of healed itself. When you buy an
Yeah,
onion,
yeah, yeah.
you can see that kind of that point. So you need it to heal itself and close itself off, because if you don't, and you just prematurely cut that off and you don't let it cure, then it's essentially like having an open wound.
Okay, wow.
You've cut the skin of the onion, you've exposed it to air, and the onion can dry out faster. The storage on it is going to go down much faster.
I'm glad people figured this out like 6,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a lot. Yeah.
Once you reach that point, then you can cut those green tops off, but you still want to leave them stored in the coolest area that you can.
Like a cellar, but we don't have cellars.
Yeah, we don't
here,
have
right,
that.
yeah.
And they'll
Like
store
a root cellar.
They'll store a fair amount of time, in normal temperatures. We left some out in the shed one time, for a good while, and we got busy. We forgot about them, and we went in there. They weren't rotten.
Yeah.
They were literally completely dehydrated. There was nothing but skin left.
Oh,
it was
wow,
all
wow.
it was all gone.
Wow.
And you just pick it up, and it's like what happened
Like
to the
papery?
onion? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you it's full of water, so it just slowly over time
It just
basically
dries out.
dries out.
Yeah.
But if you prolong that by keeping airflow, one of the old tricks old timers used to do is they'd go to the drugstore and you buy a set of pantyhose, and you could slide it in,
Yeah.
twist
it up.
slide it in.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
can-
I've
and
seen
then-
that. I
and then-
haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah,
but
and then you can hang it so you're getting that airflow
Right, the whole
all
time.
around. If you don't have a place to lay them and separate
That's
them,
kind of genius.
yeah, it's pretty smart.
I
So-
keep them. I buy like a sack from the store, right? Because I go through a lot of onions. I cook a lot, and I just keep them in a on my counter. I keep them in like the banana hook that has a basket on the bottom, and they're fine.
Yeah,
They're totally fine there. They have air going around them, and one of them might develop some spots of mold here and there. But the great thing about onions is they have layers, and I can just cut
that
off.
off.
I can just cut it off because every one of those layers is a barrier, right? There's the meat of it, and then you'll see a very thin membrane, and the meat and thin membrane, and things just can't go through it solidly. They have to work their way through one at a time. So you can cut it off, peel off one layer, and you have a perfectly good onion almost every time. Maybe two.
Yeah.
But other than that, I do want to point that out. If there's some mold on it, it doesn't mean that you have to throw it away. And a lot of people don't know that. People are very trained just to like see mold,
gotta go.
biohazard.
Yeah.
But there's mold in every square inch of air that we're breathing right now. You know what I mean? It's just life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple other types of onions. We can briefly touch on.
Yeah.
It's everybody wants in Southern cuisine green onions. So you have essentially two types of onions. You have what we would call the multiplying onion, which is going to be a larger bulb, more like in between a like bunching onion that you would buy at the store and a shallot. So it's kind of got a medium bulb, and those are very prolific. They will grow almost year round. So we those are something that are highly sought after because you can keep them in the allium family. You can have it in the summer, you can have it in the winter, and it's going to do its job. So it's a staple here, and out of all onions, it's the most sought after. But when you're looking for like what people will call like a true multiplying onion, it's not one you can go and buy from you can't run to the feed store down here and just get them.
Oh, wow.
Like we have to have our own customers come in and sell them. So it's kind of like this generational transfer of plants that have multiplied. But whereas you could turn around, you can always find bunching onion seeds on the rack, and that's what you get at the store. They're the actual bulb itself is almost always the same diameter as the green top, and those are more of a cool season. You could grow them ideally most times of year, but they're really going to do their best when it's cooler.
Yeah.
As well as like you mentioned, like shallots being kind of the cream of the crop.
It's the culinary goat. I'm telling you.
Shallots fall more to a traditional onion, so they like cooler temperatures. They actually like, I would say, a little more cool temperatures than what we get here in our particular area. Maybe some areas of Zone 9A, like Houston, that are a little farther above I-10 that stay cooler longer. Yeah. They might perform better, but here the shallots don't always perform as well.
Yeah, they don't always get to the size that they should. Yeah, I've seen a lot of small shallots. I tried to grow shallots one time, and it didn't turn out very well.
We might sell a 10-pound sack of shallots a year, maybe two, versus ton of bundles
10,
of
15
onions.
sweets. Yeah.
So they're awesome, but kind of like garlic for a lot of people, they're not worth the effort and the space.
Yeah.
So it's one that you're going to have to put a little bit more effort into.
Yeah. But there's also a walking onion. You ever seen the walking onions?
I have not.
They spread. They like make shoots off and then drop.
Okay.
They make shoots off and drop, and they're called a walking onion. I saw them the other day. I've been like I told you before we started this. I've been looking at a lot of really weird.
I wonder if that's very similar because there's also like wild onion, which would be considered it's a weed in a lawn. You cut the grass and you hit that onion and you start getting the teary eye, and it's there's wild onions.
It probably is.
So.
It's probably just one of those. It's probably more of an heirloom, is what you would say. But is there anything else we need to know? Is there anything else we need to know about onions and alliums or winter growing months, or do we need to put compost around it, or?
No, I would definitely say I would mulch them because we talked about moisture being important. So I like to put pine straw around.
That's what I meant. Mulching them, not composting.
Yeah. Mulching just for moisture retention. Also insulation if we start getting some heavy frost or freeze. Just, I'll pile up my pine straw just to kind of protect my green tops. Not that they're necessarily going to die or they can't take
Right.
the cold, but just a little bit of insulation
Just give them a little
is
help.
always helpful.
Yeah, just
So,
give them a little help.
other than that, I mean, I think just key takeaways, timing is everything. We've got to have a short day variety to grow a bulbing onion here. We need to ensure that we're feeding them heavily with nitrogen. We want to have 1 inch of water whenever we're growing the green tops from planting to about mid to late January.
Pay attention to the tops.
Yep.
Make sure they're growing.
Then we want to increase the water up 2 to 3 inches whenever we're bulbing, and then just watch for our tops to start falling over. And that's going to tell us that it's time to harvest our onion.
That's awesome. Thanks for all the tips on how to grow onions, how to grow shallots, alliums. I'm not going to try to grow garlic now. That's great. I've learned a lot, and I hope you've learned a lot too. You get out there and grow some onions, and we'll see you back here next time.